Welcome to the second information session for the ACF McKnight Visiting Composer Residency program. Today, we will be getting into details about this program using previous awardees' applications as examples. This is a continuation of the previous session that will be available to watch on the ACF website soon. Before getting into that, we want to introduce ourselves, starting with Carolina.
Hello, my name is Carolina Heredia, she, her pronouns. I'm a composer based in LA and the director of programs at ACF.
Hello, everyone. My name is Natalia. I'm also a composer. I'm based in New York City, and I am the programs associate for the American Composers Forum.
Hi, my name is Tim Eigel. I'm also a composer. I'm based in Minneapolis. I use he, him pronouns, and I'm the artist support manager.
Well, as Natalia said, the session aims to explore the application in more detail and how to use the platform and the different sections to best express your creative practice and to support your application. So let's review quickly the intent of the McKnight Artists and Culture Bearers Fellowship, which is to recognize and support artists and culture bearers who are beyond emergent and have sustained experience in their area of practice. Fellows demonstrate achievement, commitment, and high-level proficiency in artistic and/or culture bearer practice that contributes to their field and impacts and benefits people in Minnesota. So even though this application may seem extensive, for some of you, it is probably barely enough for you to express the full breadth of your creative practice and your story as an artist. I encourage you to use as much of the available space as possible to give the panelists, who may be strangers to your work, a complete sense of you as an artist and to support your proposal. Throughout the application, you should provide the panelists with the information they are required to score. If they can't find this information, they may score you lower on those aspects. For this, the key evaluation criteria are particularly relevant in phase 1 of the review process. So please make sure you're clearly and promptly addressing the following points. For your residency proposal, creative potential, imagination, and effectiveness of the proposed project. Technical proficiency necessary to achieve the desired results as proven by previous experience and work samples, and the anticipated value of the residency project for both the composer's artistic work and the ensemble and our designated Minnesota community. And in addressing your career status being beyond early practice, you should be discussing a significant body of work, creative achievement, and sustained contribution to the artistic field. Again, all of these points can be demonstrated throughout the different sections of your application. And the ones that are obviously particularly important will be your proposal, the selection of your work samples and the order of the work samples, and the previous experiences that have prepared you for this proposal. So today, we will be focusing on those components from the application. Here you can see all of the different parts. Ideally, a good application, a strong application, usually has an integration among all the components that I mentioned. For instance, like even demographic information may become relevant to support a proposal that wants to work with a specific community that you may be part of. It may be part of your identity. So in that case, even demographic information, if you choose to share it with a panelist, becomes relevant. And again, the relationship between your work samples and your work proposal is also essential. You can use all of the spaces, not just the work samples and the documents relevant to the work samples, but also the descriptions of your work at all spaces where you can be integrating your proposal into the other parts of the application. So as I said, today we're going to be focusing on the proposal, on the past experience. We're going to mention some of the possibilities for the list of potential organizational partners section. And then we're going to talk about the work samples and look at examples for all of these parts. So let's talk about the project proposal. The project proposal could be in the form of a video or a typed answer. The project proposal should include a description of your residency goals and planned activities while you are in Minnesota, including your interaction with the community you've chosen, why you seek to work in Minnesota, an explanation of the anticipated value of the residency for you and that community, and any other information you would like to present to the review panel. Make sure to address the questions why you and why Minnesota. These are questions that you should be asking yourself first, and then make sure that you are addressing them in your application. So now we will watch the video for the proposal of J.E. Hernandez, who is a 2021 McKnight visiting composer. He decided to make a video for this part, so I think it's a good example then to contrast with the other example that we have. So please, as we're watching this, consider how this proposal responds to these questions, the why you and why Minnesota at the very beginning.
Hi, I'm J.E. Hernandez, and I am a Mexican composer currently working out of Houston, Texas. My artistic practice focuses on elevating personal narrative, both my own and that of others, through the prism of interdisciplinary art and music. My project is titled 80-Ton Forgings, Equalizing Immigrant Workers' Voices Through Music, which is a reference to the railroad industry. Before becoming a citizen of the United States, I worked in this industry, an industry which has also been a historic part of the economy of Minnesota. Through the McKnight Visiting Composer Residency, I will collaborate with Minnesota organizations to equalize the voices of immigrant workers. The collaborative work will involve interviewing immigrant workers in Minnesota and incorporating parts of their speech into a musical work that is presented in a final concert. Throughout the residency, I will work to establish a dialogue with the Minnesota immigrant community. I will work to function as a conduit of their voice and establishing an artistic dialogue with the larger audience of other residents of Minnesota. I will work with the partnering organizations to provide collaborative infrastructure between them and the Minnesota community so that the impact made by my residency does not stop upon the expiry of my stay. Throughout the residency, I will establish a pathway of mutual understanding in between immigrant workers of Minnesota, native Minnesotans, and Minnesota musical organizations. This pathway consists of educative interactions in between all three groups. For immigrants, showing them how trauma can be processed through art, providing healing and tools for overcoming, will show their community the value of art and music. For native Minnesotans, the final work, presented as a concert at the end of the residency, will work to show in full display the plight of these immigrant workers, connecting them directly to the humanity of these invaluable Minnesotans. For the artistic partners, the process of working on this music, rehearsing, reading about the program, and meeting these workers will provide a rich, deeply personal and moving experience that will lift their artistic practice for future engagements with Minnesota at large. The work I do will be a catalyst for communication, providing an equalizing force for immigrant workers and other Minnesotans, artists and regular folks alike. When working with immigrant workers, I will first and foremost get to know as intimate details as possible about their stories. I will participate in community activities that time allows and get deep insight into their daily routines as workers, as immigrants, as humans. I will record these interviews and talk to them about the nature of our collaboration. I will introduce them to music that uses similar practices and show them the value of these works. Lastly, I will introduce them to the healing power of music and art and how through my own work, I have processed traumatic experiences in immigrant detention and dealing with the concept of being an immigrant in the United States. For Native Minnesotans, I will invite members of the community to participate in conversations with some of these migrant workers throughout my residency. If needed, I will act as an interpreter for Latinx migrants. These conversations will serve to foster interest and initiative in Native Minnesotans for the final concert, as well as establishing direct dialogue in between two communities living in the same state. The concert at the end will finalize this conversation, and both immigrants and Native Minnesotans will be treated to a compelling artwork that inhabits the space they lived communally. For the participating organizations, the sheer act of putting together a performance with this kind of goal increases their social footprint and strengthens the integrity of their core values. We will be working together to establish a narrative which will reach people far and wide. The entire process of putting this music together will prove vital to the project as the crux of the entire experience. I will work with community organizations, Navigate MN and CTUL, which stands for Centro de Trabajadores Unidos en la Lucha, to identify immigrant workers with compelling stories. These migrants will, through their personal narrative, provide the life material which is the key to this program. The work that both of these organizations do is solely focused on the individuals who are the core human chronicle of the project, immigrants and immigrant workers. Once the individuals have been established, interviews will be conducted with them. These interviews will be recorded, and both audio and text will be incorporated into a musical work written for either chamber orchestra and vocal ensemble, SATB, or chamber orchestra and soloist. The target partners are the St. Paul Chamber Orchestra and Vocal Essence. Both of these organizations have proved, either explicitly through statements on American diversity and social justice, or implicitly through their programming choices, to be the perfect partners in celebrating and elevating the plight of migrant workers in Minnesota. Their artistry is top caliber, and I believe in their partnership being key to this program. I chose the McKnight Composer Fellowship because I believe in the value of the organization and communities in the state. For the immigrant communities, these are organizations that are already more involved than even some that work towards similar social justice causes in my home state. There are dialogues that need to be explored to the benefit of all Minnesotans, and I similarly believe in their value. The musicians and other artistic organizations hold their worth in their inherent commitment to not only music and the arts, but to bold, inclusive programming. I believe that my work is leading me to a place where my contribution is in line with these principles and that we can make great work together. The lasting impact of equalizing communities and their voices is incalculable. I believe that through this kind of narrative-driven work that accesses a core human value, we can build bridges that last for generations. I want to bring to the Minnesotan community a type of value that will work to build infrastructure that facilitates further dialogue in between communities. I think that this infrastructure will evolve beyond the original idea as well, building a forum for communication that can work in between any two peoples.
As you can see in the first section, he describes the context, a personal connection to the proposal, and the goals of the residency. The second section, he describes the anticipated value of the residency for the applicant and all the collaborators and communities involved. And the remaining part goes into more detail about J.E. Hernandez methodology, the role of the collaborating ensemble, and the lasting impact he expects for the Minnesota community. A full version of the proposal will be available as a PDF on our website. And so now let's look at some written excerpts from John Pleitso's 2024 McKnight Visiting Composer proposal. Once again, this is an excerpt. This is not the entire proposal, and you'll be able to access this in the PDF that we'll share in our website. But you can observe some of the same characteristics, a very strong case for a personal connection and interest in research and true engagement, and a desire to have a balanced exchange, even though it may or may not include the commission of the piece, the creation of the piece. In these two cases, there is a commission as part of the proposal, but as we will see later, that is not a requirement. The most important, the core of a proposal should be the kind of engagement that you'll have with the community, the kind of growth that both you will have as an artist and as a person, and the community that you will be engaging with, and hopefully a lasting impact that won't end when your residency ends. Okay, let's move on to the next section that we wanted to explore today, which is the past experiences relevant to the residency. This is a new section that wasn't present a few years ago. And you're asked to provide information regarding your past collaborative experiences that may have prepared you for this residency. And examples may be commissions, community engagement projects, mentorship experience, etc. This is a very important section, and that's why we decided to add it as a separate one. This section will provide the panelists with more direct insight into how you may be prepared to accomplish the goals of your proposal. Panelists will expect some demonstrated previous experience with any community-based activity in the role you will be taking. They will assess your understanding of the responsibility of taking this role. Let's give a look to John Pleitso's text. Once again, you have the full text available for you later. So let's move on to the list of potential organizational partners. So while it is understandable that you may not have details or confirmations from your proposed collaborators at the time that you're sending your application, it is expected that you have done some research identifying those or the existence of the types of organizations you might like to collaborate with for your project, or even their willingness to collaborate with artists in similar capacities. Let's look at what J.E. Hernandez did for this section. Here he describes the two categories of collaborators he was going to pursue, and then added a list of those with links to the websites and an extraction of their mission statement that included the relationship of these organizations to his projects. Once again, every application is very, very different. We tried to show different examples here, but it really depends on the context. In the case of John, he simply listed organizations he had identified and provided the website links. So there's not a right way of doing this. I think that the more information you can include, the better. I thought that including the mission statements that show a clear relation to the proposal, I thought that could be helpful. But again, this is also possible, and you may add information in other parts of the application. So let's go to the work samples now. The work samples support your proposal and your career status, as well as your previous experiences. So they're very important. And it's very important also how you select them and the order that you assign to them. So as general guidelines, provide audio and or video work samples totaling at most 20 minutes of your original music. There's more information about this if this is confusing in the first video and also in the guidelines. At least one of your work samples should be of a work you created in the past 5 years. And if you have previously received a McKnight Fellowship or Residency, concentrate your work samples on the period of time since your last award. And please follow the recommendations available in the program guidelines and in the work samples section of the application. So we're just gonna name them really quickly here. Provide web links to your music samples that could be from different platforms. Some panelists are not fond of Spotify because it requires to have a subscription to be able to listen to the full sample, but it's accepted. That's just not encouraged. Ensure that the web links you provide in this application remain active and unchanged until February 1st, 2025. And if you do not wish for your work samples to be public, you can make them unlisted so that the community can still have access. For each audio and or video work sample, please submit any accompanying documentation materials that will provide further insights into your creative process and clearly describe the nature of your involvement in creating the piece. This is a very important section. You can spend more or less time in the description of your work. I think it's an important space where you can continue adding supporting information to your proposal. How are those work samples related to your proposal or your previous experiences or some of the key evaluation criteria? So it's essential space that I encourage you to use in full. If notated scores are part of your creative process, please provide PDFs of the score corresponding to the audio and video samples you submitted. If you are submitting a file, but then queuing different parts of the file as the excerpt for the panelists to listen to, you should be marking that excerpt in the score too. That's very helpful so that panelists know where the audio excerpt starts in the score. There are many other options. Western classical music notation style score is not required. There are so many ways to describe your creative practice. The panelists are interested in knowing a lot about your work samples and your creative practice. So again, we provide here other ways of submitting other kinds of materials that may not be PDFs. Examples of this are little videos explaining your creative process, any kind of written description, a spectrogram, anything that informs of your creative practice again, and perhaps your approach to music making or music creation. Applicants whose work samples involve lyrics must include lyric sheets. This could take the place of the score if one is not present. And again, as I mentioned before, we're open to receiving many types of sonic representations for the review process, including video, spectrogram, waveform, graphics, etc. Panelists cannot access music notation, electronic music, graphics, video, or other specialized softwares. Now let's talk about the two sections for work samples. You will have the work sample 1, which makes the most critical impression on the panelists and should represent your most distinctive and compelling music example. This is the work sample that the panelists listen to in the phase 1. They're only required to listen to work sample 1, so it's definitely very important in that first phase of the review process. As we're moving to the phase 2, then you have the opportunity to submit up to 20 minutes of work sample 2 or divide it with an work sample 3. This can complement the previous work samples. Perhaps if your work sample 1 is not, it's your strongest work, but it's not related to the proposal, then work sample 2 should definitely be something that supports your proposal. And perhaps work sample 3 could be something complemented, showing some of your other experience or like the depth of your work, the breadth of your work. I recommend that you have the key evaluation criteria next to you as you choose your work samples. They should represent all the aspects the panelists must evaluate, especially for the first round. And remember, if you're a previous fellow, please include work since your last award. So now let's look at examples for work samples from these two applications.
sacred names of people and their tribes. Nipmuc, Mohican, Pocumtuck, their nations are